stuff I help with. I don't know where you're at.
Scott, I'm on a video call right now. Can I send my assistant, John Franklin, to sync up with you? What's your location?
I would if he's got me. Step on.
Sorry about that, Clem.
No worries, man.
I think we're cool. My buddy will take care of him.
Okay.
He just needs a cable run or something. Let's put our faith in the Brazilian internet, which is, we're going. I bet in 30 seconds I have QuickTime. It's tough finding a quiet place.
Oh no, I get it. This is actually our first recording where it's on show site, so it's gonna be interesting playing into the whole that whole feel of it. Now, Brent, title. Do you want rigger, master rigger? Are there different clear?
Oh gosh, that's kind of an indescript, a master rigger. I have a client that loves to call me that. That's a New York crane operator term. Is technically what master rigger is.
Oh, okay. So
let's go with. How about the owner of Alpine Rigging? We'll go with that. There's a catch-all for it.
All right, guys. Hey, so this is Brent Armstrong, the owner of Alpine Rigging. This is who we were talking about, Steven. This is the guy. I was telling you about, man. We have a rigger.
This is the guy. We finally have a rigger on the production channel. I love it. Hey, Brent, how's it going, man?
It's going great today, guys. How about yourselves?
Oh, pretty good, man. Pretty good. Home for a while, looking to get back on the road. Like I mentioned to you before, I've got a little bit of an itch going. So Stephen, like I mentioned to you, man, so Brent and I met on a show in New Orleans, and there was just something about his personality, man. He was happy to assist me as a video projectionist. He was happy to
Never have I ever heard of a rigger happy to assist anyone other than himself.
You have to understand, Clem was in front of the action, man. He came to me with, to talk about cables and stuff, and that puts you at the head of the list, right? If you're proactive on a job site and polite, a handshake and how are you goes a long way.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I try to do from the beginning, understanding that we are all here to get a job done together. This is a team, a collaborative effort, and how can I help you help me? If that makes any sense.
Totally, 100%, 100%.
So Brent, how did you find this world of live event production?
I am a reformed mountain climber, is what you would call me. I think I from about 18 to 30, every breath I took was to climb a mountain or a rock. Wow. Or something like that. And we in the olden days, you lived by the rules: go make a lot of money and then go spend it climbing. And, after a couple of years of that, really what happened then is I met my wife, and everything just equalized and chapters were turned, and fell into the Vegas rigging scene, which is a rock climber heavy scene, or at least it was in the era I broke in. And then an unbelievable continuous streak of lucky breaks kept me moving forward. And I don't know, a lot of things came together. I incorporated in 2010, and the blessings just keep coming, man. They just keep coming. And here I am now, talking to you boys from Rio de Janeiro.
That's right. You're in Rio. Now, I'm not going to let you just kind of throw out that you are, a rock climber, a mountain climber, and just brush past that. You've got to tell us, how does one get into that? I'm a Florida boy now, and we're talking about beach life. There's no mountains here in Florida.
Oh yeah, totally.
But Coronas, very different.
Yeah. So I grew up in Estes Park, Colorado, which is literally the gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park. Like that's where the park entrance is and stuff. It's a tourist town or was in my day again, of like 5,000 people year round. So it's a small place. And when I was 18, I was working one summertime building houses, doing the carpentry construction thing. And one day, one of the guys on my crew was like, my partner bailed. and you're going with me. I was like, okay, cool, well, whatever. And that was such an amazing and fortuitous break, right? Like I read your piece recently, Clem, about mentoring.
Yeah.
And this guy was all of that in the rock climbing sense. Like I honestly, now I'm, 25 years into rock climbing. I can't imagine a better type of fellow to have the path laid down for me by. So Don Cardinale, if you're out there, Don, I can't imagine you're listening to a production podcast, but Don Cardinale changed my life forever, taking me rock climbing that day. Yeah.
You never know. We have a very large audience.
Right. I hope he hears it, man. I hope he hears it because it's all love. I haven't seen him in a long time. Yeah, no. So then we started rock climbing, locally all over the park. There's several lifetimes of rock climbing. My eyes changed. My perspective on my hometown changed radically. I wasn't just a dumb high school kid trying to have a beer in the parking lot of McDonald's. Now you're actually enjoying this magnificent landscape. And then it took off, man. I'm pretty much, once I sink my claws into something, like that's what I'm into. So that just, such a wonderful chapter of my life that ran hard for probably 12 years. Every breath I took.
Was it ever dangerous? Like, did you ever think, I guess, I don't know. Do you have any rock climbing stories where you almost fell or something?
Oh, tons of them, guys. Tons of them. Like we could, I don't know if you would measure it in minutes, hours, or beers, how I could regale you with, especially if you're Flatlanders, right? Out of context, they all, they all sound pretty rowdy.
Sounds
I can
like
tell you
from
this.
another universe or something.
So in 2003, I was spending my second winter in Chamonix, France. So that's the French Alps and stuff. That's a really amazing place to be. I froze my foot and I lost all of the toes on my left foot. I got really bad frostbite.
Wait, what do you mean?
I was in the hospital. And, I had orthopedic orthoscopic surgery to cut my foot in half, kind of.
You don't have any toes on your left foot right now?
Correct.
What?
Yeah. So when you want to talk about
quite a bit right now.
Yeah, I was into it, guys. I was into it. I ran in a pretty. It seems many lifetimes ago now, right? In the entertainment industry, buried in constant gigs, but I was pretty close to feral. It was just so wonderful to be connected with nature like that, and I don't know, philosophically, right? You were kind of part of what we used to think of as like the living Tao. I don't want to go off on Taoism or anything, but you were really just a part of the balance of Earth. I don't know a better way to put that. You were so tuned in. It was remarkable. It was really remarkable. Those lessons stay with me now, right? Like the best part of myself is from those years. So I'm really, really lucky to have had those years and those experiences in life. Let me do that. But guys, we were talking, I would make $12,000 annually, right? Which seems like nothing now, but I never needed anything. I never wanted anything. I lived in my car and you drove around and went climbing mountains and stuff and staying with friends. It was just a different kind of life. I got to Vegas in, what was it, 05 or 06, and made $30,000 that year. The first year I was involved in entertainment rigging, I made $30,000. And I thought I was rich beyond belief. I knew I'd found the honey hole, and that was, so it's all relative. And, so I don't know if that kind of paints the picture or context of,
well, for me, it does.
Era.
It does. Because I'm thinking about what it takes to be, to have the desire to climb like that, right? A mountain, and to explore, and that no fear, and that being one with the mountain, and how that relates to being one with the building or being one with the structure, and understanding how points work, and the points on the mountain supported your body, right? And the points in the building support the weight of the structure, and all of that ties together. So to me, it does. It makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Oh, for sure. The technical foundation for force vectors and what's going on with rigging math and stuff. They were built into me. That was hardwired into me the first day I ever saw a chain hoist. So that part, that was easy. I think that's I'm just so lucky for those chapters and that ability. And then climbing's a part of rigging, going up high, not, none of the exposure or the heights ever mattered to me. So that I really think in my career trajectory, that was, those chapters I was able to tiptoe or dance past pretty quickly just because of all that rock climbing stuff and the mathematics and angles and things like that. That was hardwired into me. And obviously, it's probably the same for all of us. The trick with entertainment is the people game of it, right? Realizing that it's not about your projectors or the audio cabinets, right? Mm-hmm. It's about dealing with five varied kinds of people that have different authority levels and making it all gel. And that's the trick to this, right? It's all a people game. The technical aspect of it, while it's challenging to us, is, in the end, the easier part, right? Doing our gig's easy. It's getting everybody else to help us do our gig or help them do their gig or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. How do you, what do you think makes you able to be successful at understanding that balance? Because, not to stereotype, but it always seems that riggers are angry, and I hate to associate to put people in a box like that.
Oh, 100%.
But what is it?
No. Yeah. That's the stereotype, right? I think so. My answer to answer your question, how am I not like that, Clem? I saw that coming up, right? When I was working locally or I was a working rigger, I was like, why the heck are these guys different than everybody else? And why isn't there one of them that anybody likes, right? The thing is, a rigger's favorite word is no. Yeah, and it became apparent to me so quickly, like, I can't say no. If a no comes out of my mouth, it's no, right? Like, that's absolutely the last line of defense. You have to have a solution, right? You have to have a workaround. You have to, if you want to be successful and you want to move up in the game, you can't just be the no guy. You can say, I might not choose to go that direction. Here's why, and here's how I want to help you. Here's how we're going to get trained. Here's the answer to the question by why riggers are typically frustrated. We don't communicate well. Again, all of this is a people game and communication. And in the pre-production process, if we're able to reach out and extend the timeline, like I've just hired my first full-time guy, and all I am trying to beat into him is call the guy, call the audio guy, call the video guy, call the lighting guy. You don't even need to have anything to say. Just call him when the seas aren't rocky and establish a vibe, a rapport. Hey, I'm Brent. We're working on the same gig. I know you don't know anything. I don't know anything, but I'm here to help, and I hope we can have a mechanism to dialogue now. That cures 80% of it, right? Just to connect on the human level. So when riggers don't do that, or when we're constantly, everybody can be starved of information and stuff, and then timelines constrict and the decision making process shortens, then riggers get backed into a corner against physics, and then we get into our loads and the roof and all that. So when the communication doesn't happen and there isn't prior planning, you get a bunch of dudes that aren't good communicators, that are antisocial to begin with, backed in a corner, and the only way they can articulate their position is no. Right? That's what they know. They feel, this is my opinion anyway, they feel cornered. They're up against physics and engineering tables and load charts and all that kind of stuff. And that's the only way they know to communicate, right? I feel
like another one though is that they're on a team of like one or maybe two or three people, but they're either with the venue or but they're never usually with the greater company that's doing the technology, like providing, right? So, for example, whether it's LMG, PRG, or whatever, they're coming in with maybe a team of, hey, we're the audio video team, or maybe we even have the whole deal, audio video lights. And even though it's individual departments, you're still sort of all on the same team, all sort of trying to figure this thing out together. But rigging, more often than not, is always more of their own individual department or team, isolated, like you say, from lines of communication or whatever it is. And so that makes sense that kind of reflects or comes out on some level in their personality or in the way they interact with people, because they probably are the last to know most things, but the most important in terms of progress throughout the day. I mean, my the funniest thing I always found was that we would all race, and Clem, this from my projection, but you'd all race around trying to make sure we were ready by the time the riggers came around in their lift or whatever to hang your line array or to hang your, projectors or whatever it might be. And it was almost like you had to move mountains just to make sure you were ready by the time they got to you. And if you weren't, then you disrupted the flow of the day on some level or whatever, if they had to go out of order. Does that kind of like make sense? You guys feel like you've ever seen that?
No, it does make sense to me. And I guess a way to summarize that, and Brent, let me know if I'm in the right on the right track here. It feels like the riggers are very, and like, once again, I hate to say to put people in a box, but there's
we're not trying to do that.
Yeah, there's a structure or a process, a linear process that has to happen as a rigger, whereas other departments are more creative, and the riggers provide that structure that we have to operate in for safety reasons. And if it's not safe, then that's causing a problem. Does that make sense, Brent?
Yeah. I hear where you're coming from totally. It's so tricky because no one really knows what a good rigger does. Like, I work for all kinds of people, and I would honestly think less than 3% of the people that pay me really know what I'm up to. Right. I think my calling card is that you guys, the other vendors, are like, oh yeah, Brent's great, all of it. Right. Not like the others. But no one really. So in that, I bring that up because Stephen mentioned like the house riggers. Right. That's the common thing, whether it's PSAV in a ballroom or just the house labor company in a venue or some situation like that. They are largely detached from the process. Right. You're just the Wednesday gig. And you go in there and, they're sort of like drug dealers on a corner. They don't have to be nice. The business comes to them, right? They're not out there singing for their supper. You're in their house. You're nice or you're not nice or whatever. So that's kind of one facet of the industry. That's the venue rigger or the house rigger. You asked me what term I use to describe myself. And I mean, in its simplest terms, you call it the production rigger, right? So what is that? That's where you begin to interface with the team, right? Now you're moving around with the gig and you're the guy, right? Like, I think I'm like a combination at the highest level, a mix between a lawyer and an engineer is how I try to play it, right? Like, our production or our project has a case. I kind of organize the facts and then I present them to these other people, right? The house guys, the engineers, whomever. So there's just different facets of it and different levels kind of the totem pole. And a lot of people don't know that. Many people, it's common on site for people to think I'm the house dude. And I'm not too quick to correct anybody because that, usually plays into my favor if they just think I'm anonymous, not, part of their team. I have no ego about that, right?
Yeah.
So it's rigging's tricky like that. People talk about load calcs. I don't think many of the other departments, but you guys are the same thing. You guys can start talking about your convergence and your gray level and all that. And I just kind of numb out, right? I'm like, is the lens high enough? Are you there? Do I have to move the projector?
Right. What does trim need to be?
Yeah, totally. So I think it goes both ways,
Yeah. So
obviously, as we get more into
process, though, like what is? I mean, you mentioned the phone call, but what is it that you have to? How much work do you do on the front end? What does your workload consist of on the front end?
Yeah, totally. So here, I hope no other riggers are listening to this at this point. So you want to jump in. I think the optimal point from a value standpoint with production is as soon as they have a scenic drawing, right? As soon as they know what the set is, unless it's a really old associate and client and you're involved in like the venue selection and the viability there, right? Because you have to know if all this stuff can fit in the room. So as soon as there's a scenic design, you start to get those drawings on, then the rule of thumb, right? Scenic, lighting, audio, kind of like that, video in there somewhere, and you just start layering all the departments on top. I think if you can get there as soon as the scenic drawing drops, then you can immediately, kind of kick the tires straight on everything else when questions come up, when there's this, there's that. So you're looking at the drawings, you're understanding if it fits, right? Scenic designers are a whole, each department, we all have our nuances and our characteristics, right? So the scenic designers, if it's a 25-foot ceiling, they want 26 feet. No one wants to admit that the truss and the motor or the chain hoist need any headroom up there. So you're working with that. You're understanding a lot of what I do is the physics of it, how heavy and whatnot, but then the sequencing, right? Like I really try to value engineer the install, right? Don't put the screens up before the scenery, make sure that the correct install order goes down, or any sort of plan. The more even a bad plan is better than no plan.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just constantly tracking updates and talking with people. There's a lot of details to chase down. Most people, I say I need 3 gigs, right? A lot of people, I'm an acquired taste. And on that first gig, they're like, what is this guy asking that for? Why does he want to know that? But by the 3rd gig, I'm everybody's best friend, right? Like they know why. They feed me this select bit of information, and then I don't hassle anybody. I go back in my cave. So it's communication, value engineering, making a lot of times there's incompatible systems that have to physically join together or tie together, right? Who's bringing the zip ties? Who's got this? Just kind of making sure we all show up to the island with the right stuff. Clem, not to beat you up, but projectionists love to show up without a hanging kit, right? Well, do you have any lighting safeties? Do you have any wire ropes? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You got the cage? What's the cage? I didn't do a good job explaining my pre-production process. I'm also doing drawing management that whole time. Everybody's layer. I really enjoy the, do you want to call it the creative? It's more the technical process of drafting, overlaying. I model all the shows in 3D. I really need to shout out Kish Rigging. They're in my opinion the industry leader in the U.S. They're out of California, Moore Park, California. Very early in my journey, I met those guys, so I got to have a peek of how the best operators do it. And as I go around, so many people aren't. So you want to talk about mentorship, and so many people aren't afforded the opportunity to see what things look like on the grand level when they're going well. Right? We can all get the big gig, and it's a bloodbath, and we muddle through it. But to see one where it goes well is a great gift, or was for me. To be paying attention with the baddest dudes doing it. So yeah,
I got a question. I got a question for you, Brent. What? And again, this is actually insightful for me, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I bet you there's some other people that are curious. But like, when you look back at a show, when it's done, like how do you kind of measure success? Like for me, setting up is one thing, but then performing during a show, right? Directing cameras. Like I just did a fun, kind of music festival out in for the Final Four, and it was 3 or 4 days of setup, but then also 3 or 4 days of concert and rock and roll, and I'm directing cameras, and I'm performing, doing a show position, and then when it's done, it's strike. So for me, when I think of setup and strike, those are they're important, but they're not really what I'm there for. I'm there for the show. But for a rigger, you're real, like your measured moments is during the setup or the strike, but during the show, I guess, like, how do you reflect on a show? Do you reflect on it and its success in the way it looked and the way the CEO got on the stage and the success that everybody had and the client felt? Or is it more of at the end of that load-in day, you go, that was an amazing load-in day. I got it in, and everyone got in on time, etc.
As a rigger, where's the gratification?
Right.
So everybody would have a different answer there. I can't speak for all of us. I hope no one knew I was there. I hope there's no issues, right? And I can just get out of the way. I feel like, an hour of delay for rigging when you guys want to hang your cabinets or your speakers and stuff kind of ripples and magnifies into rehearsals and stuff. An hour of rigging time can turn into a 4-hour loss of rehearsal time or something like that. So I hope no one knows I was there. I hope it was just smooth and everything was to the schedule. Hopefully I was involved in the schedule and gave realistic expectations. And I really do. I hope no one knows I was there because it was just dialed. right?
Mhm.
Sure, there's safety and there's all this weird minutia that I geek out on, like, oh, I nailed that bridle. I called all the bridles right the first time today. That stuff's cool. I mean,
that
that's
bridle my
internal
bitch.
measurement. Yeah, totally. Or that whole rig squad. Bill, that's what's up, dudes. No, that's like on an internal. No, but none of that matters because no one else is paying attention to that, right? Like I know if there was that I have a light footprint. If I have a light footprint, then the show had a chance, right? I'm no hero. I can't make or break the show, but I can get out of the way efficiently, so it can become magic. When you guys are turning all your stuff on, that's when I go hide. My work is done by then. So that's genuinely what I try to do. Just get out of the way as quick as I can. If we're having a bad day, I'm always telling all the boys, just give them a truss. Just give them one thing. Just give every department a single thing and they'll bury themselves. We won't be the shiny thing. So just deliver something and get out of the way. And I mean, there's safety metrics in there and I'm super in tune with all that. But no, my metric is just have it go to plan for everybody else. That's just to get out of the way.
You mentioned safety there, and I think that's it's hard to talk with, have someone like you as a guest and representing more of that rigging and sort of structure and safety, and not think about it. And we've all seen them, and honestly, it's both got the wow factor, but also just because we're so close to it. Whenever I watch these videos of either festival rigs falling over stages, things like that, my heart hurts. I get, I feel for the team that's kind of behind that, because that's got to be tough. I guess, have you ever seen or been a part of a rig that's gone wrong on some level and something you could share there? Or B, how do you keep that, knowing that that's out there, that's always out there and could happen? How do you kind of guarantee safety?
Knocking on wood. I have never been I've never been on a gig in any position as a local, as a head, or now with my firm. We've never had a structural incident like that. And I'm knocking on wood. How do you keep that from happening, Stephen? With every ounce of effort you have, as the gigs get bigger and more complex, right? Because there's so many moving pieces. It is a daily challenge to communicate why that has to happen, right? And you have to manage all of these things ahead of time. You have to set the expectation, right? Because the rigger will wind up in front of the pro. Why is the audio? I mean, you really have to be strong, and you just really have to manage expectations. And a lot of it, for your voice to have traction, getting to the business level and liability and whatnot, it really helps when you supply the package, right? When you really are the vendor, not just the guy that's there running around angry, but when you have a little more, stake in the game, then you can bring to the table your operations management plans and your trigger charts and your reactions. Speaking mostly to outdoor events now, you use your third-party structural engineering, which is typically sometimes can be a battle. But if they come to you for the whole package, then you build that into the estimate, and that's that. And if you don't want to deal with that, call the next guy, right? But you're calling me so that it's right. Is my hope. I don't want to speak in declarative terms, but you have to be strong on those fronts. Going back to how little is really known about my voodoo and our services, you have to be able to articulate that. You have to be able to tell people what the $2,500 for an engineering evaluation buys them. And I don't like to scare people. You're so, the lowest common denominator is to wave the safety card, which is also the heaviest card, but you don't want to wear that out. It's just communication and articulation and pointing out that examples like that. There's lots of convention work in Vegas. That's one market that we help in Vegas. And I've walked away from projects there because the people weren't into what I was selling, and then they have had incidents. Their structure does fall over, literally. And you never want to say I told you so, but that happens. Those are things that happen. It's so hard to avoid that. I can't speak for every rigger, but those things literally keep me up at night, outfoxing that, right?
And that's where the understandable no comes in, of the rigger no. Because
Yeah.
that's
Totally.
where everybody else is trying to be creative and everybody else is trying to do their thing. And it's like, hey, at the end of the day, this falls back on me. It's my job to make sure that everybody is safe. Yes, I'll put the safeties for the projectors on the quote and make sure that they're there and make sure that I'm using the span set with the steel in it and the shackle appropriate for the weight of the projector stack and all that. But a lot of people are like, oh, the rigger will come back and check everything because it's going to fall back on you guys, and that's where you're saying that, hey, I want to make sure that it's all about the best practices, right? The best practices of safety and security.
Correct. It's people as I've been fortunate enough to kind of come up in the game in the industry, I call them like the country club conference calls, right? Where you are on the phone with the CEO and the whole creative team and the whole design team. Like this gig I'm on right now is, has a huge kind of corporate vibe in the conference calls, and I pull no punches. Right. And people like the company I'm working for right now, Riot Games, they're a big video game folks. They're so millennial. So a millennial approach to the creative process can feel, I'm kind of old school. I'm only 42, but they make me feel old school, totally different than how I came up. Right. I came up with a very stern decision-making process, everything funneled through one person. And it's not like that. And I get on and it's really anomalous. Everybody's like, who is that guy? Just because it's such a different tone. But in the end, with even the smallest bit of time and exposure to me, like 95% of people are glad I'm on their team and glad that there's someone that's not just there just to do the business, or just to get a yes man. It takes a short amount of adjustment, but I feel that obviously you have to adjust that and use the correct business voice when you're in the country club room. I'm not saying I don't stick my foot in my mouth all the time, but you have to be strong and you have to be resolute and you have to have explanations. You have to be able to articulate safety concepts, right? We're doing a series of gigs with the same client in China at the end of the year, and they keep sending me pictures. Is this safe? Is this safe? And I look at it and you laugh and you're like, no, none of that's safe. That's China. But how do you date? You've got their Chinese office on there. So what's your response there? Safety is a subjective thing based on metrics and standards. And those standards and metrics are different everywhere in the world. China's might be looser than the States. The States might be looser than Germany. That's kind of, my country club talk to say, no, it's also, I could send you pictures of what I'm loading in right now. Like Brazil's a little, it's all a little, and you have to, once you start going internationally, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole, you can't just shame people, right? People all over the world have pride and don't want to be told they're hacks or it's ghetto. They
or told no,
right?
They don't want to be told no.
Well, no, all the other boys do the heavy lifting there. They're always expecting the no, right? And they get this guy that can, try to talk them through it, and they're hypnotized by the end, and they'll do anything you want. And you didn't have to say no.
Well, Brent, I got another question for you. Kind of trying to dial this in a little bit more to, we always kind of like to get an idea from personally, like how are you navigating the production, sort of industry, not just from a professional skill set, but from a personal. You mentioned on the front end that you really found so much joy in the wild and kind of in nature. And when you spend time kind of climbing and exploring, kind of all the beautiful things that this earth has to offer. And I totally meet you there, man. I wish I got out more than I do, but I personally find soul-filling, fulfillment in just sort of experiencing and being out in nature. But I guess, knowing that you're doing corporate events a lot and others, that's a lot of ballroom work there. And that's a lot of not in nature, but just in four walls and carpet. So how has that been? Have you found conflict there in the fact that you want to be out in sort of the wild and experiencing nature, but you need to be in a ballroom to find a paycheck? How's that been?
it gets easier with time, honestly. I would say the first 5 years, I questioned daily if I was making progress, right? Like I said, I was used to make $12,000 a year when I was living in my car climbing. So then, you jump to the $30,000 level, like I said, my first year locally, and then, better things happen. It was a daily challenge for me and questioning myself for probably 5 years. Then it went to weekly. And now I'm a small business owner that's just buried, and I just miss it. It's just a different chapter of my life. My wife and I, a strong partner is my honest answer there. My wife is my best friend, and she has just been so understanding. And I know how do you asked how I reconcile not being outside anymore? Not well. It's just kind of, once I met my wife, everything shifted. Not because she asked me to shift anything. That's why she's wife level, right? Everything just equalized, and I was beholden to her, and I wasn't just on my own anymore. And I want the best for her. If I think my whole goal is to retire, at a young age when I've still got some fight in me. And that's a joint family goal. We don't have any children, so that makes it a touch easier financially, but that's our goal. So every morning I wake up and I try to do my best for her. And she does her best for me, right? So part of my doing my best, obviously, she's on me now to stay sane and be outside more and like Brent, cool off. But I'm in my head going, the clock's ticking, man. I got a late start. I didn't start entertainment rigging. I was rigging in other industries after college and stuff, but I didn't come to entertainment till I was 30. I didn't become a business owner till I was 36, and the sprint just picks up. So I don't know if I don't reconcile it well, is the honesty of it. I miss it all the time. A lot of friends, I live vicariously through the guys I hire, right? There's a guy with me here on this job that's going to India right after this by himself, and he's just going to wander into Bangladesh. Those are my surrogates. I've chosen a different path. I lived it so fully, guys, so fully. And my foot was a major milestone, and man, you better shape up. Things can happen here. Things can happen. So that was the first kind of speed bump in living purely. And then my wife, and then you just grow up a little bit and transition. And some of us grow up and keep doing that.
Yeah.
But my path is where I am now. Well, I made a decision to pursue this with most of my mojo.
Well, my question, Brent, is how can you turn the clock back? How can you still be true to somewhat of who you are and who you were as the younger self, and enjoying that aspect of life and not get caught up in the world of owning a business, in the world of chasing the jobs or doing
the rat race and all that. Yeah, totally.
How do you turn the clock back?
I don't think you turn the clock back, right? You live in the moment. You go punk rock and you don't answer the phone. That's the honest answer. Since I got a late start, you push the ball so hard. Oh, I want to get it going. I want to get the ball rolling. And you just keep pushing. And while you're pushing in those moments, you don't notice that it's starting to roll. And then the next thing you know, the ball's going to roll over you. You don't have to push it. You have to avoid it, right? So now I would say just in the last year, do I really absorb the lesson that I can take a week off and the phone will ring again, right? I'd have 15,000 emails in my inbox if I really went off the radar for a week, but you can. And that's my lesson right now is the world will still call and people will still call. If you don't return an email in 10 minutes or something like that. I'm working on that, Clem. I'm working on that. I think you
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you have to put a higher value on that than a day's work in your office. And that's we all have different challenges, right? Some guys have 9 kids and have to take every shift, and then they're still loading in the day, and then they take the other show call that night, and then I don't have a good answer. I think I'm sidestepping. How do I turn back the clock? I'm working on it, man. I am working on it. You know, the more of my old places that I share with my wife, the more she wants to go there and be there. She's like, you know, let's buy the RV and take 6 months off. I'm like, gosh, that sounds great. And if I did that, I bet everything would be as it is when I returned, right? I think the sky would fall, but everybody would call it. I don't know if that's true to say. You know, the world needs service, but I think, yeah, I don't know, Clem. I don't know. I'm babbling to try to find it.
No, and you know, and I think a good way to end this is just a book that I read. It's called The One Thing, and just thinking about the one thing that you can do to make all other things easier. So, you know, what's one thing that you have to answer this question, but just to think about what's one thing that you can do today to start to rewind that clock back. You know, just one thing that you can do today that can bring time back to where it was a little more simpler, a little more enjoyable, and not part of that rat race, but more where to give your wife what she wants, or what anybody, what their spouse, their life, what they need. What's one thing that you can do to make life a little more simpler?
Man, I don't have the moxie to do this quite yet.
Yeah.
I think you chip off the bottom 15% of your clientele, right? The people that really frustrate you, and, you know, the low rate, that can you fit this in? Oh, throw that on the truck for free. I think you would just chip those people off. You know, there's 15% of your bandwidth back. Now you have an opportunity in the universe, in a bandwidth window, to meet the next great thing, or the next great people. You know, that's the most common suggestion that gets thrown around, is just chip off the bottom 15% of our workload.
Yeah.
You know, I just hired my first full-time guy. That was a big leap for us. You know, he's wonderful. Justin Lee. Thank you. You're going to be my solution to reclaiming the old life. Delegating, learning to be a better leader, learning to manage better. This, you're talking to a kid that used to live in his car and rock climb. All of this is corporate leadership is a tremendous challenge. It's a tremendous challenge. But I don't know. I think you were searching for something deeper there, Clem. I think you threw the hook out there and I didn't bite it right.
No. And like I said, it wasn't even looking for necessarily an answer. That's just something for us to all. I mean, that's something that I face, the challenge that I face, to constantly ask myself, what is one thing that I can do today to make tomorrow better? You know, and like I said, there's no need for an answer. Just, I hope everybody just kind of thinks about that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I totally hear you.
Well, Brent, man, this has been helpful and awesome. You know, I can't believe you're in. Where are you? Rio de Janeiro.
Rio de Janeiro.
On a show.
Rio de Janeiro. Yep.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You're talking
and
about.
Guess what? Nobody even knew he was there. Nobody even knows he's there.
I know. That's right.
That's the rigor way.
We're doing it right this week. We're doing it right.
If Brent had it his way, no one would even know he's there. I love that.
Yeah. That's the
cool,
truth.
Man. Well, Brent, appreciate you, brother, as always, for joining, and hopefully be able to have you back someday and hear a little bit more about kind of how that's going. It's exciting too. If people wanted to get a hold of you, or kind of invite you onto their productions, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
That would be Brent, Brent, at alpinerigging.com. ALPINE.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks again for joining us today on the production channel.
Stephen and Clem, I wish you all the success in the world. This is a really cool thing, and any way to pay it forward, I think is a great value to all of us, guys. Thank you for the advice.